Chapter 30. The Seven Fires. Nanaconan held his icy gaze for almost a full minute before he rose from his porch chair and walked into his cabin with a flip of his hand to beckon Lily to follow. She followed. Unlike her house, which was filled with warm light from all the windows, the only light came from the front door and a small window along the back wall. Nanak's log house was a simple square with exposed pine logs that rose from the floorboards to a height of 7 feet, where the steeply sloped wooden roof met it at a grid of exposed beams. The central stove had a chimney that rose through the rafters to meet the ceiling. Dozens of objects hung from the rafters, from dream catchers to drying herbs. "I'm pleased you've accepted this responsibility," he declared, even if his pouting expression did not reflect it. "Since the arrival of the Zaganash, many elders have refused to train women, but before the time of the first fire, women served the people. You are Tawapa Asabakashi of the Wijigan clan, which not only gives you the right to be trained, but will perhaps reveal an even greater purpose." He motioned for her again with his hand. "Sit, granddaughter, and tell me about this name of yours." So far, so good. Lily sat adjacent to him in front of the stove face, which allowed her to focus on the flames and coals rather than staring into his wrinkles, age spots, and imperfections. "Hey."
Sansa did not adjust to the time very well.
Oh, a little sleepy, are we?
Yes.
Okay. When she was a child, his aloof nature frightened her, but now she only saw a fragile man. "My mother named me Tawapa, which means water lily in her Dakota tongue, a reference to a lake that has roots that aid in giving visions." And the grandfather shook his head. "It is true you were named after Lake Tawapa Takian, but that is a Dakota word. But it was your father who chose the name. Do you know why?" "My father?" Lily bluffed, connecting the story Magisi told her, which she replied, "It's also a reference to the lilies that grow near the outlet of Lake Manitou, which is where you and your father Shagobay brought Nicolette. Does that sound acceptable?" "Are the two stories connected?" "Everything is connected," he answered, pointing to the dream catcher hanging above his head. "Tell me about your last name." "Weber, a family of spiders." "Asabakashi is the word for spider, a reference to a grandmother spider from the creation myths. She's also the one who made the dream catcher." "And the Wijigan clan?" Lily shivered. "The Skull clan. Magisi told me a little bit about the Wijigan clan. He said they were the ones who were at Bleeding Rock." Grandfather took over the conversation to tell the story. "Chief Weeyipisu beheaded women and threw children off the cliff and into Lake Manitou as a sacrifice to the horned serpent. Don't ignore the past. My father was killed for being a Wijigan, even though he had no part in these atrocities, or the atrocities from the past. You carry the crimes and guilt of all the concerned parties, the Dakota, the Wijigan, the pillagers. Perhaps that is why Manabozho has brought you to me. For you to understand the end of the journey, you must first understand its beginning." Nanak reached for one of the sticks found in an open barrel beside him. "This is a willow branch, which we use for making dream catchers. The thick end represents the past, and the narrow end represents the future. You are here, in the present, where the two ends of the willow form the loop upon which the web of the spider is built." He found a cup, which held an unknown liquid. His tremulous fingers removed a slender piece of sinew, which he wrapped around the conjunction of ends, leaving a few inches of past and future to form a V in the loop, above the loop. Lily saw there were other cups, some holding beads, others holding feathers, and others holding long strands of leather. His frail, scarred hands worked steadily as he spoke. Long ago, when our people lived along the shores of the Atlantic Ocean, prophets came to warn us of the future. Each prophecy was delivered by a different prophet, who delivered warnings about a specific time, which became known as fires. The 7 fires are thus 7 separate prophecies. He glanced at her. Do you understand? Lily nodded, just like the Bible. So these prophets, were they part of the village, or were they visiting strangers? Nanak gave a wry grin. I'll explain that to you at a later time. Now I'll tell you about each of the 7 fires. The wording of these prophecies varies in the telling, and the way it is told upon the prairies is different from how I tell it and how it was told in the East. These differences protect the legend while allowing the people to know their past. Lily waited, watching him work. The first prophet told us, in the time of the first fire, a people formed from nothing will rise up and follow the sacred shell of the Medewiwin Lodge. The Medewiwin Lodge will serve as a spiritual guide and source of much strength. The sacred Migis will lead the way to the 7 stopping places of the journey. You are to look for such a turtle-shaped island that is linked to the purification of the earth. You will find an island at the beginning and at the end of your journey. You will know the chosen ground has been reached when you come to a land where food grows on water. If you do not move, you will be destroyed. At the time of these warnings, many people scoffed at the prophets, for they lived in peace and harmony. Those who believed the prophets, a people formed from nothing, departed the Atlantic and became the nations of the Anishinaabe. Those who stayed behind, our Micmac brothers, were the first to have contact with the Zeganash. As the prophecy foretold, they suffered greatly. He reached for a bead. Do you have questions? Her pile of shells rested a few feet away from on the shelf. Her brother had already explained the strange breadcrumb trail, so she was not taken aback by the supernatural aspect of the tale. Where did they find the first shells? Grandfather's eyes widened at her interest. The place was known as Muniyang, or Turtle-Shaped Island, which now is known as Montreal. Several hundred miles away. No wonder the Micmac brothers thought that brothers had lost their minds. Imagine sending out Magisi to look for magical shells on islands. Tens of thousands of islands. Were all the stopping places islands? Yes, in fact they were, although not all the settlements developed on the islands themselves. As soon as the new stopping place was found, the quest for the next began immediately. It often took years before the path was revealed. Where was the second stopping place? From Montreal, the Anishinaabe had to defeat the mighty Iroquois nation, which ended with them finding the second stopping place near Niagara Falls. And once they reached the second stopping place, did they get the second prophecy? No, the Anishinaabe left, having received all of the prophecies. It wasn't until they reached the third stopping place, Round Lake, near Detroit, that they understood the second prophecy. The second prophet warned, "You will know the second fire because at this time the nation will be camped by a large body of water. In this time the direction of the sacred shell will be lost. The Medewiwin will diminish in strength until a boy will be born to point the way back to the traditional ways. He will show the direction to the stepping stone in the future of the Anishinaabe people." Nanak's eyes narrowed. So the large body of water, was that one of the Great Lakes, Lake Huron? Grandfather bobbed his head, giving Lily confirmation. So what exactly is the lost sacred shell? If you prove to be worthy, I will explain the meaning to you, for it is a mystery that your generation must solve. During the days at Round Lake, many of the Anishinaabe either lost faith or grew weary of the quest. Our brothers, the Ottawa and Potawatomi, simply made homes in Michigan. The boy spoken of in the prophecy guided the people to the fourth stopping place, Manitoulin Island on Lake Huron. From there, the words of the third prophet came true. In the third fire, the Anishinaabe will find their path to their chosen ground, a land in the west in which they must move their families. This will be the land where food grows on water. Food that grows on water, Lily repeated. That's wild rice, isn't it? Yes, from Manitoulin Island, our people found the fifth stopping place near Sault Marie, and after, the sixth stopping place at Madeline Island, off the shores of Lake Superior. It was during this time that the warning about the arrival of the Zaganash came true. You will know the future of our people by the face the Zaganash wears. The fourth fire guided our people in their alliances with the French, English, Americans, the Jesuits, and others. It was during this time that our Ouijigan ancestors discovered our sacred quest was known by our enemies, and the long war began for control of the seventh stopping place. The fifth fire warned that we would abandon the old teachings and trust in a false promise. And now those living on reservations understand the meaning of the destruction of our people. The dismantling of the reservations and the indoctrination of boarding schools. This prophecy is more like a retelling of history. My father Shagabe explained that with the arrival of the Serpent Star in my youth, the era of the fifth fire had begun. Nickel explained to him that the Serpent Star was destined to return, and that with good health I might live to see it again. With more than a decade to go, I worry you and your brother will have to witness the sixth fire by yourself. Is he sick? What does the sixth fire describe? The prophet of the sixth fire said, in the time of the sixth fire it will be evident that the promise of the fifth fire came in a false way. Those deceived by this promise will take their children away from the teaching of the elders. Grandsons and granddaughters will turn against the elders. In this way, the elders will lose their reason for living. They will lose their purpose in life. At this time, a new sickness will come among the people. The balance of many will be disturbed. The cup of life will almost be spilled. The cup of life will almost become the cup of grief. Lily looked down, ashamed of her recent arrogance, but also because of skepticism. Is he making this up? If the seven fires prophecies are told orally by the Mide, how do you know they are still accurate? Do you remember the sacred shell? The original prophecies were placed inside of the shell to be protected and preserved. A chest, a box. But you said the sacred shell was lost. It will remain lost until the final days of the seventh fire. But the Ouijigan clan, and the faithful now known as the Chippewa, kept their own records of the prophecy. While these prophecies were kept by the Medewiwan priests, scrolls of all the sacred ceremonies and prophecies were kept in a hollowed-out log from the ironwood tree. These sacred texts were then hidden from our enemies in a place only one man knew. It is said that during this era of the sixth fire, a young person will once again guide the people to the truth. When your brother found the Migi shells, I believed he was the little boy prophesied to discover these sacred texts. But now I believe the truth has revealed that you were the one to find the shells. Lily kept her gaze on the cold metal of the stove. So what does that mean? I must teach you how to battle the horned serpent. Whether or not you are the one who will receive visions of the Iron Scroll is to be determined by the will of Manabozho. But your blood, as part of the Ouijigan clan, demands much more. At the end of the seventh fire, there will be a fight that will not only determine the fate of our nation, but of all races. This fight will either end in a rebirth or the destruction of all. The will of Manabozho the Trickster? Lily chuckled and pointed to herself. The future of mankind will depend on my ability to fight a water snake. Won't be much of a fight. Yes, with my teachings, the horned serpent is destined to be defeated. You will draw it out of the depths, destroy it, and cast it into the river of souls where it belongs. That's not what I meant. I'm glad you finally come to me with an open heart and mind. But before your training can begin, I must prepare a sweat lodge. Then will be determined if you are only a teacher or a fire handler. Chapter 31. Two roads diverged in a wood. A new road existed. Lily stood at the place where the road once turned north to Nimrod, but now the intersection had been rebuilt to send traffic from Split Rock directly west to St. John. Although the workers' camp was still atop the hill adjacent to the Loose Goose Saloon, the workers were down in the valley preparing the pillars for the massive bridge. Evangeline Thunderface stepped out of the house with a basket of clothes, but stopped in her tracks when she saw Lily standing at the crossroads. Months passed since thinking of Samuel, but seeing his sister twisted her heart. Lily lifted a hand to wave, and Evangeline turned toward the clothesline without returning the greeting. She thinks I'm a whore. Memories of Samuel kept thoughts off of her current troubles, and her walk to Split Rock felt like she was walking down a tunnel of nostalgia and regret. Sister Lynch promised her that with confession and baptism, her sinful relationship with her neighbor boy would be forgiven. But what about my sins at White Earth? The bridge on the north edge of town returned her to the present, and she studied the banks of the Split Rock Creek and Crowing River for signs of wandering spirits or lost boys. It feels like I imagined it all. Back in the balcony of St. Marie's Catholic Church, Father Guerin's crates once again poured out into the space. "Ah, I see young Mr. Crane delivered my message," Father Guerin said with a smile. "Kermit's a good boy. His father is the blacksmith over at Sterling Junction." "I don't care." "Is it bad news?" Lily asked, tense and distracted. "The news is mixed with one pleasant surprise," he said, as baiting her into asking more. He moved over on the pew and patted it. Only after she sat did he continue. "Your grandfather, Chief Sweatingstone, has been released, along with several others unlawfully arrested. But not my father." "No, but I was able to meet with him prior to his trial. I know your father has made a lot of mistakes in his life, but he wants to protect you. When I told him that the Turtle Island Jesuit Reservation would remain with Megisi and Nanakonan, he agreed to the Turtle Island Jesuit School." "He sold you his land?" "No," Father Guerin grinned, though he looked defeated. "He negotiated a different deal for his children. After he heard what Adam Thunderface did with his lease to Triton, he agreed to do the same thing with his plot, leasing it to the Society of Jesus until April 13th, 1986. Your family will receive a new annual payment for the next 88 years, enough to feed you and the dozens of potential grandchildren. Even though I argued against it, he will retain the deed." Lily tried to understand her father's random date, but gave up. Why a lease? He understood the legal danger of the trial, as well as the physical danger of being sent to prison. But Megisi is his heir. Building the school makes the Society of Jesus and myself a vested ally. The lease is null and void if something happens to him or your brother, which leads me to my surprise. Lily rolled her eyes and refused to be baited. Your brother is going to be transferred to Sacred Heart in Morris. Lily found herself standing on her toes. Really? When? Soon. His time in Pennsylvania is coming to an end. Now, despite all of this, he is still effectively a prisoner, so don't expect him home anytime soon. But it should allow me to visit him and oversee his condition. Triton will be able to exert political pressure, but I'll have allies also. This, of course, leads to the next obvious question. When can we start our lessons? This is all a bit much, she hedged. As you know, I have the ride situation figured out. The boy you met, Kermit Crane, comes to Split Rock on almost a daily trip. Matt Haskins doesn't have any children, so Kermit delivers his load of milk while Matt tends to his farm. Yes, I understand, and Kermit's a nice boy, but we need to discuss pay. As I said before, daily lessons will not be necessary because there'll be times when I'll be traveling. But when I'm here, I really like to work on my language studies. I would be willing to give you $1 a day. Lily gasped. $1 a day? I just threw that figure out that a full-time teaching position at Wadena pays $400 a school year. Oh, I see. And the most I'd be paying you every day is, if you worked every day, is $365. He's clueless. Lily shook her head. Yes, but that is for a room full of students. I wasn't complaining. If anything, you are dramatically overpaying. I'd be ashamed to take so much money. $1 a day? You don't earn by your pay by the hour, do you? I have a small salary, but the church takes care of everything else, doesn't it? Father Guerin nodded. So you'd pay me $1 a day just to teach you my language. Again, it might not be every day, but if you're willing to sacrifice giving up a full-time teaching position to help me, I'd be more than willing to compensate you fairly. Lily felt a strange chill run down the back of her neck. She leaned away from him and into the corner of the pew. $1 a day just to teach you my language. In the coming months, I'm going to be speaking to many tribal elders all across Minnesota and Wisconsin. I need to be able to speak fluently and understand fully if these negotiations are to be a success. He paused. And next summer, when the school superintendent is hiring his staff, how could I not recommend you? What do you say? About being a tutor? I guess I'll do it. How can I turn down $1 a day? With the money, we could repair the house. Grinning, Father Guerin extended his hand, holding it there until Lily lifted hers and received a vigorous shake. We have a deal. Lily found herself staring at her lap after the handshake. I'll make a schedule of my travels so you know when I'll be here and when I'll be gone. I'll make a duplicate for Kermit so he knows when to stop by your house. Will the new school have staff housing? Yes, we will have a we will be building new housing for our teachers and a dormitory for the students. But your lease payment should allow you to build a new home, either on McGeesy's land or with Nana Conan. I spoke with my grandfather. He's agreed to begin my training. But first, he needs to build a sweat lodge for a test. To be honest with you, I'm a little nervous about it. Oh, I'm sure your grandfather will be a patient teacher. He has a lot riding on it, he hummed, looking interesting. What has he taught you so far? He's been teaching me about the Menawewan Way and the Seven Fires prophecies. Ah, the story of the Anishinaabe migration from the Atlantic to the woods of Minnesota. You know it? Oh, yes. I've read all about it. He turned to one of his pile of books. Was it William Warren's book, Schoolcraft? Oh, I don't know which one of these. Did you read about the seventh fire? Yes, it was one of about 2 roads. Refresh my memory. Lily took a deep breath, not just to recite, but to decide if she wanted to share. It begins by describing the final prophet. Did you read about the prophets in your book? Yes, each prophecy was delivered by a prophet. Except the fourth fire. It was delivered by 2. I didn't notice. So there are 8 prophets then? Yes, the 7th fire was different from the other prophets. He was young and had a strange light in his eyes. He warned my people. In the time of the 7th fire, new people will emerge. They will retrace their steps to find what was left by the trail. Their steps will take them to the elders, who will ask to guide them on their journey. But many of the elders will have fallen asleep. They will awaken to this new time with nothing to offer. Some of the elders will be silent out of fear. Some of the elders will be silent because no one will ask anything of them. The new people will have to be careful in how they approach the elders. The task of the new people will not be easy. And Conan went on to explain that if the new people remain strong in their request, something called the water drum will again sound its voice. There will be a rebirth of the Anishinaabe people and a rekindling of old flames. The sacred fire will be lit. Did he explain the meaning of the water drum? Lily shook her head. He said I'd learn more about it after the sacred fire, after I've gone through the rituals. Nana Conan said the era of the 7th fire, it will be a white person who will be given a choice between 2 roads. If this person chooses the right road, then the 7th fire will light the 8th and final fire, an eternal fire of peace, love, brotherhood, and sisterhood. Like the millennial kingdom described in the book of Revelation, heaven on earth. Lily hummed. Not quite. If this person takes the wrong choice of roads, destruction will not only come to this country, but death will come to all the earth's people. Armageddon, Father Garin said solemnly, but with a slight depression of his dimpled cheek. How can he be so casual about the end times? Now, do you understand how crazy all of this is? While it certainly is not the way St. John described it, there are some striking similarities between the 2 prophecies. 7 seals, 7 fires, 7 candlesticks, 7 stopping places, 7 archangels, 7 or 8 prophets. The Jews were once aghast when Paul began evangelizing the Gentiles, so it would not surprise me if God's plan involved people who don't originate in the Middle East. You don't have to renounce your salvation in order to have an open mind. He handed her a fresh notepad. Could you write down these lessons? That way I could read them during my travels and ask questions when I return. I was spying on my own grandfather, Lily thought as she nodded. I wish McGeesy was here instead of me. I'm supposed to be his voice of reason. All of my mentors have obviously lost their minds. Chapter 32, Sacred Heart. A few minutes after Jude Weber climbed into his dormitory bed for the night, Magisi Absamkashi murdered him. None of the other boys in the Sacred Heart Indian School understood or cared what happened. Some nights, Magisi silently strangled him. Other nights, Jude Weber received a knife to the throat. Once, Magisi rallied the rest of the boys, Luther Pratt, Francis Little Sturgeon, David Big Buck, Hiram Warner, Samuel Johnson, and his cousin John Labiche, to hold Jude down by the bedsheets and beat him to death. Most nights, Jude Weber was killed by smothering him with their shared pillow. Time to die, you traitor. Early in the day, Jude Weber had pitched a gem of a baseball game in a scrimmage against the white kids from Benson Public Schools. With his short hair and uniform, as well as a strong fastball, Jude looked the part of a modern baseball player. The win helped his popularity with the other boys, Lakota, Fox, Arikara, and Turtle Island Chippewa, making his return to Minnesota much more tolerable than Pennsylvania. Jude Weber now knew the parts of speech also. Nouns can be thrown. Verbs are what you do. Adverbs are how you do it. So Magisi reached up from the depths of the water, picked up a stone, and violently smashed Jude's face until nothing of his other self remained. While the other boys slept, Magisi continued his secret training. From the depth of his imagination and the depths of Lake Manitou, he summoned the Mishi-Genebeg, the horned serpent. Like the one described in the tales of Ayash, his Leviathan had sharp horns upon a lion's head, except rather than hair, his creation had slithering eels for a mane, its long neck cut through the water, which hid the rest of its monstrous form. In his dream, Magisi stood upon a rocky point on Mizhike Island as the surge of water preceded the creature's attack. With shield and spear, he held his ground, ducking and stabbing. Some nights the fight would last for hours. Other times he would dodge the blunt force, the initial attack, and surprise the horned serpent with a simple but fatal wound. But each night, Magisi died by morning, allowing Jude Weber to come back to life. Chapter 33, The Thunderbird and the Manitou. Is she buying it? Lily watched her mother process the request. The wrinkles in Winnie's forehead seemed to indicate the obvious answer. So why is Father Guerin traveling all the way to Turtle Mountain in North Dakota? I didn't think there were mountains in North Dakota. Indorheiak Basin. Lily remembered the word used by Father Guerin. Like Devil's Lake, a body of water without an outlet. You know how your mother was taken prisoner after a battle with Chief Sweatingstone's Chippewa? At her mother's nod, she continued. A whole bunch of Chippewa believed the last stopping place must be farther west, since no one could conclusively find the place in Minnesota. I thought it was Mille Lacs, Winnie said with a shrug. And others think it is Spirit Island by Duluth. I didn't say they were right. The Turtle Mountain Reservation is on the border with Canada, and apparently there are even a few small bands that went into the Rockies. Her mother was missing the point. Father Guerin keeps a journal that might one day become a book on culture. That's why he's traveling to North Dakota. It's also why I'm going to be staying with Grandfather for a few days, to learn. Winnie sighed. I hope you know what you're doing. Lily held her blank notebook and pencil. I'm doing this for posterity. I'm not about losing my faith or anything like that. I'm acting like a secretary for those who will come after me. An hour later, Lily's notebook was thrown into the stove at the center of Nanak's shack. For generations, the Ouijian have passed down its words without paper and pencil. You will write these words upon your heart, understood? Father Guerin gave that to me. Lily watched the notebook burn. I'll just write them down later on another notebook. Come, there are things I must show you. He took her to his new sweat lodge and explained again its purpose and construction technique, which she had written down back in her bedroom. Then he took her to a patch of overlooking the Blue Knife River. Grandfather looked down at his hands. Do you see these burns? When I was a boy, Chief Machigabo of the Pillagers killed my father by burning him alive. But before they killed him, Machigabo gave me a chance to rescue him. They put a hatchet in the hot coals and said to me, if you truly are a Wabano, then reach into the flames and pull out the hatchet. You can cut his bonds and free him. His face was grim as he added, I am not a fire handler. Is that why Magisi had his bandages on his hands? We are not the last of the Ouijigan, despite the efforts of men like Machigabo. The men who came at the beginning of summer, Joseph Littletoad, Clyde Speaks First, and James Graysky, also carry the blood of the Ouijigan. Magisi is not a fire handler either, although he might still have one part to play in the sacred fire. If you indeed found the Migi shells, we might play one of the other parts. You might play one of the other parts. Magisi believes he is the Gichi Anamiki, the great Thunderbird. Is that true? It is up to Manabozha to decide who is to defeat the Manitou. My father believed he had found the great Thunderbird after meeting the explorer Joseph Nicolet. When the sacred fire is lit, a fire handler will summon the horned serpent from the depths. And once it rises, the great Thunderbird will destroy it and send it into the river of souls and the land of the midnight sun, where all souls must go. What to ask first? The river of souls and land of the midnight sun is akin to heaven. The horned serpent is obviously something evil like Satan. He won't tell me about the sacred fire yet. How does the fire handler summon the horned serpent? Once in a generation, Manabozho will mark a child with strange abilities. A Mide is trained. A Jessicid is blessed with the ability to see spirits. But the rarest of all the spiritual gifts is the one passed down from the dawn of time. A fire handler can both command spirits and control elements, if armed with the right magic. If Manabozho is also a trickster, how can I trust any of this? I don't understand. If I know what you mean, I don't know. I don't understand. I don't understand what you mean by the great thunderbird. I thought it was some sort of animal that protected our people from evil, like the Benisi, the guardian birds. Thunderbirds have always defended the people from evil spirits and Manitous, but the great thunderbird is destined to fulfill the seventh fire by destroying the evil Manitou that sleeps below the waters of the lake. This boy will be different from any others that have come before. When my father met Joseph Nicolet, with his boy-like features and wide eyes, he believed the prophecy had come true. Grandfather pointed to below where they stood. He took Nicolet past the rapids where I tended the canoes, up to the spot where the rocks bled blue and green. He should have shown him the secret our family. He would have shown him the secret our family kept if Chief Machigaba of the Pillagers had not taken Nicolet prisoner. He frowned impatient. Now do you understand? Shown him what secret? I'm trying, Lily muttered. So in Lake Manitou there is a horned serpent. What did it do that it was so bad? Why are we trying to defeat it? Manitou is the word for water spirit. The horned serpent is a phrase used so we don't utter the spirit's true name. Satan, Lucifer, Beelzebub, I get it. The horned serpent might sleep, but it is very real and very ancient. He comes from the dawn of time. Do you know the legend of the Fisher Cat? The story of the Big Dipper? My father told it to me. Lily grinned, remembering an open field. McGeesy was just a baby held in Winnie's arms. She and father rested on a blanket looking up at the stars. It's one of the few stories he ever told me. This seemed to please grandfather, who smiled a little. Yes, the 7 stars of the Big Dipper are part of our constellation for Ojig, the Fisher Cat. It is a reminder to us that the war with the Wintermaker is as old as the earth itself. Long ago, the horned serpent walked on the earth like a man, the Wintermaker. This man was a powerful shaman who learned how to collect the souls of the dead, keeping them in a cage like pet birds. Why? The Wintermaker believed if he could gather enough souls in his cage, he could cheat death and become an immortal. Place of Souls, my mother's name for Lake Manitou. Did the Wintermaker become immortal? Yes, but not as he wished. When the great serpent spirit learned what this shaman was doing far off in the lands of the north, he sent a warrior, the Fisher Cat. The battle between the Fisher Cat and the Wintermaker was so fierce that the world itself was almost destroyed, forcing both of them to flee into the stars. If the Fisher Cat is the Big Dipper constellation, does that mean the Wintermaker is the North Star? Close, grandfather said and smiled. See, perhaps it is your destiny to teach your brother the secrets of our family. You have the face of a woman, but the wisdom of an old man. Thank you, Lily chuckled. So tell me more about the Wintermaker. The Wintermaker is represented by the constellation you know as Orion, for his spirit rises, descends, and then rises again. He used his magic to keep himself trapped here, and although his human flesh was killed, his spirit remains. If the Wintermaker is restored to life, as is the plan, he will usher in the destruction of the world. If he is defeated, then the world will see the 8th fire. How is he defeated? The sacred fire can only be lit when the time is right, when the Wintermaker is vulnerable. Our ancestor Weepisu tried to force the prophecy, only to see his efforts destroyed. Hearing the name flooded her mind with images. The horned priest down by the Split Rock Creek, the one that Albert Fish also saw, the image in my bedroom window. I need your help to save the children. Help me finish the song, Weepisu had said to her. Do I need to help fix a mistake? For the Wintermaker to be defeated, we must be armed with 3 weapons given to us by Manabozho, the water drum, the sacred shell, and the ironwood log. You are Wijigan. If the secrets are lost, the blood of your ancestors will be upon your hands, and the future of your children will be put in peril. I understand. When was your last moon time? My menstrual cycle? Is this a joke? It has been 3 weeks. Grandfather nodded. A woman's power is strong during her moon time, which is why most are not allowed near the sacred lodge and sweat lodge. A woman's body purifies itself, whereas men must perform rituals to cleanse their bodies from the poison water called alcohol. For generations, our family has protected old magic known as the Song of the Manitou, which is needed to light the sacred fire. If you are to learn the Song of the Manitou, you must first be tested. I don't know about all this. I just want to learn the songs and stories. Want? Duty is greater than desire. If you are to learn the Song of the Manitou, you must prove to be worthy. We shall see if Manabozho has chosen you. The ghost mentioned a song. Lily looked down at her crucifix, which grandfather saw. For evil to be defeated, there must be more sacrifices. You must be willing to make sacrifices, just like you are Christ. What kind of sacrifices? When your father was a boy, we entered the lodge looking for answers. He did not hear the answers he wanted. Perhaps you will not hear what you seek. I don't understand. When your father learned the truth about his past and his future, he rejected his path. Now you come searching the same answers. The Song of the Manitou teaches that a great thunderbird will defeat the evil one. But first, a powerful fire handler must wake it from its slumber, and another will... Nanak's voice trailed off. Either way, I do not know when I die. I do know that when I die, you and Magisi will be the only ones left who know the Song of the Manitou. What exactly is the Song of the Manitou? The Song of the Manitou is powerful magic, or magic medicine, or as you call it. Each verse is a separate spell, and when sung in its entirety, it will light the sacred fire, bringing the 7 fires to an end. And what are... First, we must discover the role chosen for you by Manabozho. You must be tested. If you are willing, at dusk, we will enter the sweat lodge. That's nice. Chapter 34, Song of the Manitou. 4 days after entering the sweat lodge, hunger had gone from a sharp pain that coursed through Lily's body like electricity to a dull throb. She had no energy to care anymore. Not that she was hungry, nor that she was half naked, and even when grandfather re-entered the sweat lodge with more heated stones. From outside, Lily looked down at the moose blanket underneath her as he entered with more stones. She poured a few scoops of water onto the fire, and the temperature in the lodge became sweltering again. She pressed her face against the cool earth, tired, hot. "Are you angry with me?" he asked, as he sat down on the other side of the fire. Despite having gone outside, sweat poured down the side of his face. His father was a hero. My father is a criminal, but we're both victims of our destiny. No, I'm not angry. You are doing what you've been prepared to do. You do not believe our words. She just wanted the test to be over. Perhaps I'm not meant to understand it. Today is the 4th day of your fast. Tell me again, why do we fast? Lily sat up, the massive bundle of woven shells draped over her small breasts, sticking to her skin. We fast for 4 days because that is how long a soul takes to travel to the land of the midnight sun. Is that why Jesus remained in the grave for 3 days, or why Lazarus stayed in the tomb for 4 days? Does the Hebrew soul follow the same path as the Chippewa? Grandfather took a medicine bag and showed it to her from across the fire of the lodge. If you are indeed a fire handler, your weary soul will awaken after its journey to the place of our ancestors. Why did the pillagers burn you? Grandfather looked at his hands. The Ouijigan clan was once trusted within the nation, for our guidance brought the faithful to the stopping place. But when the war with the Sioux went on for more than a generation, the Ouijigan elders grew desperate. In their desperate, they turned to dark magic and initiated a rite involving eating the flesh of the dead. Cannibalism? When the people learned of these deeds, our relatives were driven away from Madeline Island. In this time of darkness, my grandfather Makadiwa was born. While Manabozho did not bless me with the gifts of the fire handler, my great-grandfather Wiyipisu was born to be both Jessica Kid and Wabano. Despite the dangers of the Sioux, he came to Lake Manitou alone, believing he could fulfill the prophecy. His black heart twisted the 7 fires prophecy, and he believed if he released the Wintermaker, it would be his ally and help him defeat all those who wronged him. Is my tormentor evil, then? He's the one who made the sacrifices at Bleeding Rock? Nanax nodded solemnly. He tried to impose his will upon the Great Spirit, and instead of waiting for the proper time, he tried to wake the Wintermaker himself. He failed because he did not have the sacred shell. He possessed only the water drum and the ironwood scroll. When the pillagers and other bands of our people learned what he was doing, they allied themselves with our enemies to crush the Ouijigan clan. Wiyipisu was slain along with most of the Ouijigan clan. My grandfather fled north to Canada, where he died of old age. But before he died, he told my father about the secrets buried at Lake Manitou. Now I must pass these secrets on to you. Wiyipisu died at Lake Manitou? So none of the other Mid-A Jessica Kid or fire handlers from the other villages or clans knows the Song of the Manitou. This is something only the Ouijigan clan knew? Yes, for the 7 fires prophecies to reach an end, the Song of the Manitou must be sung, accompanied by the sounding of the water drum. Is this how I could save the children in my dreams? The prophet spoke of a boy who would dream where the ironwood log was buried and usher in the 8th and final fire. Do you think Magisi is this boy? That is yet to be seen. Your brother has some gifts of the Jessica Kid, and has been selected to train as a Mid-A when he returns. But he was not a fire handler. Like you, he is already unique because of his blood. I believe both of you will have an important part to play in the days to come. That is why I must prepare you. The fast will find out if you are a Jessica Kid, and your soul will return to the land of the midnight sun with answers to guide you. And how will I know if I'm a fire handler? Grandfather again looked down at his hands. The test of the fire handler is different. A fire handler is a servant of Manabozho, blessed with the ability to handle fire. Only a fire handler trained to sing the full song of the Manitou can use the water drum to wake the Manitou from its slumber. That's why I have to learn the song, in case the water drum is ever found. Grandfather nodded. Your brother will not be the one to wake the Manitou because he is not a fire handler. I see, but he might still be the great Thunderbird because he is a Jessica Kid. Yes, men like Joseph Littletoad, Clyde Speaks First, and James Graysky can still train Magisi in this role, but only I can pass down the Song of the Manitou. Father Garen was right about my role. So you don't need me to do anything more than pass down the knowledge of the song? I know you have cast aside your beliefs, but I want to test you. See if you are a fire handler. He's going to burn me. But I'm a Christian, grandfather. I don't believe any of this stuff is real. His scowl made his face look as if it was about to break in half. When the black robes first walked upon our shores, they understood the truth shared between the Christian God and the beliefs of the Metawewan. They understood our Kichi-Manadu, the Great Spirit, was akin to their God. They understood our Jade-Manadu, the Guardian Spirit, was akin to their Holy Spirit. And they understood our Manabozo, the Mediator made man, was akin to their Christ. Do you think the similarities stop there? And Jesus is the Son of God. Manabozo is a shape-shifting rabbit, the trickster. Are they two sides of the same coin? Why does Magisi have to do this? He's only a boy who is pure of heart. The dark medicine surrounding the Manitou corrupted my great-grandfather after decades, and the people cast him and the Ouija-gun down. The 7 fires talk of a boy leading the way, yet only the blood of a Ouija-gun can fulfill prophecy. A time of trial is upon us. It must be Magisi. He paused, studying her. Perhaps you will not be the one to wake the Manitou. What if I'm not? Then I will teach you the song so you can pass it down. But I can only teach the song to one committed to learning. For me to teach you the song, you must be tested. I chose to put my hands in the fire to save my father, and Magisi chose to pick up a hot stone. This is your choice alone. Lily relented with a defeated nod. Then I'll learn the song of the Manitou to help my brother. I will teach him everything you teach me. Once, the Ouija-gun were part of every village, but only the chosen ones were allowed to learn the song of the Manitou. Now we will find out if your body and soul are strong enough to endure. You will eat this paste, and then we will go outside. If you can hold a stone, then you are worthy of learning the song. If you can carry the stone into the lodge, then you are a fire handler. From the pouch, he began to mix strange compounds together in a wooden bowl. One of the compounds was a blue paste. In the Gospels, Jesus asked Peter to walk on water to him, even though Peter already believed Jesus. My grandfather asked the same of me, even though I don't believe. But I promised Father Guerin, and I love my little brother, and I owe it to all of those who came before me. When grandfather extended the bowl, Lily looked down at her pink and blemished palms and accepted it. The paste coated her mouth like chalk dust, choking her until her saliva helped it pass. She stood. Outside the entrance of the sweat lodge, a pile of heated stones sat upon a fire, along with the fork grandfather had used to live them. He began to sing. The heat radiated off the stone as Lily bent over the flameless coal bed of coals. Her hands hesitated above the pile, the heat pouring off the closest one. She scooped one up and became a fire handler. The Lesson of Jonah. Half a dozen hands instantly shot into the air when Sister Inez asked the question. Lily's eyes scanned the Sunday school class, even though she wasn't the one to call on them. Britta Forsberg's entire arm vibrated with enthusiasm. Competing for attention, Lindsay McPherson whined like a hungry puppy. Sylvie Berg calmly raised her hand, even though Lily doubted she knew the answer. Sister Inez's attention finally focused on 2 boys in the back of the room, Frankie Auerbach and Albert Fisher. The 2 looked like brothers. The only difference was the birthmark peeking from Albert's hairline. Neither had raised his hand, but Albert dared to look, whereas Frankie looked away. Frankie? What? Frankie almost jumped. The accidental sass made some of the other boys smile. Can you explain why Jonah boarded the ship bound for Tarshish? Sister Inez repeated. Frankie blinked as he searched for the answer. He was running away. Running away from what? Again, half a dozen hands shot up. Lily looked down at her own hands, then her palms, before putting them behind her back. There was not a burn, mark, or blister to be seen, but she still felt scarred. Cynthia Van Slyke answered, Jonah didn't like the people in Nineveh because they were pagans, so when God sent him to preach to them, Jonah disobeyed by getting on the ship. Very good, Cynthia, Sister Inez praised. Now, as we heard, Jonah did not get very far before God caused the storm to stop him from running away from his purpose. What happened to Jonah because of this storm? Most of the children raised their hands, except for Albert Fisher. A whale swallowed him, Monty Crane shouted before he being called on. How did he even end up in the water, Mr. Crane? When he shrugged, Sister Inez called, Britta. The sailors threw him in the water when they heard how he disobeyed God. That's correct. Before another question could be asked, Briscoe Miller raised his hand, forcing Sister Inez to acknowledge him. What kind of fish was it? It was a big fish. I'm not quite sure what kind it was. Then each child spoke over the top of each other. My dad said it was a whale because they can breathe air. What kind of whale was it? A blue whale. They're the biggest. Was it a terrible dogfish like in Pinocchio? Or the Manitou? I bet it was a sperm whale. Sperm. The one word through the discussion in complete chaos as all the prepubescent boys and a few girls burst into laughter, causing Sister Inez's face to turn red. That is enough of that. And the yardstick that appeared in her hand ended all snickers. After that, the lessons continued in absolute order until Sister Inez dismissed the children. As Lily tidied the room, she took a moment to clarify a few thoughts rattling around in her head. Father Guerin was still in North Dakota, leaving her no one to share the unholy miracle that had happened a few days earlier. Sister Inez, I have a question about today's Bible story. As long as it isn't identifying the species of fish that swallowed poor Jonah. No, Lily smirked as she tended to the chalkboard. God sent the big fish to swallow up Jonah and carry his body back to the coast, right? Yes. Sister Inez straightened her notes. Was Jonah dead? No, the point of sending the fish was to keep Jonah alive. God demanded that he go to Nineveh, so the fish brought him all the way back. Lily accepted Sister Inez's authority and didn't ask anymore. Is there something bothering you? Biting her bottom lip, she... At this, why would God spare Jonah's life? At this, Sister Inez stopped collecting pencils and turned to face Lily. To teach him a lesson about obeying God's will. At first, Lily went to meekly accept the answer until she remembered she was an adult and countered with, do you remember how Jesus referenced Jonah when telling his disciples about his impending death on the cross? I believe it was in Matthew 12. Lily amended silently before continuing. Yes, Jesus said he would be dead for 3 days and used Jonah as a comparison for the disciples to understand. Yes, at the end of 3 days, Jesus was alive, and Jonah was alive on returning to the shore after 3 days. God wanted Jonah to preach to the Ninevites, right? Yes, but Jonah didn't think they were worthy of salvation. In a way, he would have let them burn in the flames of hell instead of bringing them salvation. Hell. After finishing the confirmation program with the sisters at Sacred Heart Indian School, they thought she had a clear understanding of heaven and hell. The righteous souls went up in the sky, while the evil ones were punished with the flames of the underworld. The simplicity of her adopted religion made her a quick convert, but it wasn't until after Nana Conan revealed her abilities as a fire handler that she began to realize Lake Manitou shattered her beliefs. After holding the hot stone long enough for absolute confirmation, She had dropped it at Nanak's feet and ran back to Winnie. I see your point, Sister Inez said, clearly placating Lily. Jonah is being racist by refusing to preach to the men of Nineveh. What if God wanted to teach Jonah a lesson by showing him, either in a vision or in spirit, what waited for the Ninevites if Jonah did not preach to them? What do you mean? Jonah gets swallowed by the big fish, but a few verses later, Jonah is seeing the depths of the sea, including the mountains of the ocean floor. How can he see such details from inside the big fish? Perhaps this is what he saw before this fish swallowed him? Sister Inez wasn't cooperating. How could the souls of the dead gather in a place like Lake Manitou? Then why does Jonah say he cried out from the belly of hell and mentions the bars shutting behind him? What if this watery hell is the destination for all human souls? Jonah was a prophet of God. Of course he would not go to hell. I think he compared it to the awfulness of being in the fish, which was a miracle itself. Lily surrendered and turned away, unable to ask what she really wanted to. Carrying the supplies downstairs, she almost knocked over Albert Fisher as he came around the corner at the bottom of the stairs. "Oh, are you all right?" Albert nodded but didn't move. The boy had big eyes so deeply set they looked like puppy dog eyes. Unlike the farm boys, Albert was frail and thin. In the months she'd been assisting Sister Inez, the boy had only uttered a few words to her. "Could you get the cabinet door for me, Albert?" He nodded and walked over to grab the knob. Then he just stopped. "Did you see it?" The somber tone in his voice sent chills down the back of her neck. "See what?" "In the woods, by the bushes of Split Rock Creek." "That's right. I was walking through the woods and spooked a deer." Having spooked several deer along the path, it was a half-truth. "Is that what you saw?" Albert shook his head. "You need to make it stop." "Make what stop?" "Him. You need to make him stop. Don't let him trick you." Albert blinked and turned away.
Chapter 37. The Old Tree Sighs. Hiawatha County, October 11th, 1897. Halvar Dobie tried to imagine another world from another time. His feet stood on solid stone, but his heritage taught him that the world was ancient, caught in a cycle of destruction and rebirth. Beneath the surface, the remains of the old world existed. He knelt down as if he were in a church. "If we have truly found you, then I offer my life to restore yours. Guide me, give me wisdom." Dobie's God didn't answer, which didn't shake his faith in the least. The Order of Eos took root following the destruction of the previous world, and for countless centuries it grew closer and closer to its final shape. Now the fruits appeared in the branches. If we are to break the cycle, sacrifices must be made. Dobie rose from his silent prayers and dusted off his knees. Ozias Haggard and Ira Douglas approached him. While Douglas worked on all the business and political maneuverings to set up the next stage of the old war, Dobie had taken measure of Hiawatha County. "So," Ira Douglas answered, "do we proceed?" In the east, Lake Manitou grew dark. In the west, the setting sun illuminated the field of rocks with pale red light. Dobie ignored the question and walked over to the depression in the stone. "So this is where it happened. This is where you'll make your quarry?" Ozias Haggard, unlike his ignorant brothers-in-law, took his responsibility seriously. "I'm ready. I know what is at stake. I will reward your trust in me." Dobie kicked the toe of his boot against the smooth stone. "We pin our hopes on this little patch of stone?" "I know I can't prove it, but this depression was made by the Philosopher's Stone," Haggard argued. "How?" "I know all the rumors about Lesueur and Lahontan, but that was 200 years ago, and since that time, Eos has spent considerable resources chasing down countless lies. The Delhut family has never wavered in their steadfast belief of what lies here. The truth cannot remain hidden. The earth bleeds blue once again, for a good reason, Haggard pressed. It's a crazy story, Douglas added, but the circumstantial evidence Delhut has collected does seem to indicate some validity. In 1758, spurred on by the heavenly appearance of a comet, an outcast clan of Chippewa known as the Weejigan took Lake Manitou from the Sioux. According to the lore, they sacrificed a dozen captives to the horned serpent that dwelt in the waters. 10 years later, the same priest attempted to summon a god buried in the stone with an ancient relic referred to as a water drum. Back then, the Order of Eos was clueless about what was happening at Lake Manitou. Nor did the Jesuits, the Periphery, or even the Priory of Ormus have a hand in what happened next. A young Sioux chieftain took upon himself to build a coalition, including the pillagers, to wipe the Weejigan off the face of the earth. Here, at the place where Halvar Dobie now stood, a Weejigan priest transformed solid stone to create the beginning of a tunnel. However, the Sioux Chippewa coalition stopped him that day, killing every last man, woman, and child they found camped along the shores of the lake. So what happened to the water drum in the battle? Dobie asked. If the Weejigan did somehow find LeSueur's lost prize, what became of it? They hid it, Osius Haggard quickly added. It explains the blue earth, the vitriol, the ormus that Professor Nicollet observed when he visited both Mankato and Lake Manitou. The Philosopher's Stone refused to be hidden down at Mankato, and now somewhere in Hiawatha County, it refuses to stay hidden. I'll be frank with you, Haggard, Dobie added. William Sinclair is focused on the Rocky Mountains. He's convinced Baron Lahotten's map described the upper Missouri River. Hell, Sinclair is convinced Joseph Nicollet intended to return to the upper Missouri before his untimely death. He thinks his brother's theory about Hiawatha County is a dead end. But after visiting Lake Manitou, I think a further look is warranted. So we're proceeding? Ira Douglas asked. Do I tell them about the bad dreams I had last night? In his dreams, Dobie pictured the earth cracking open at Lake Manitou and an army of giants emerging from the void, bringing death and mayhem to the world. Beneath the roots of the world tree, Layrad, the three Norns sang their song of doom. We must break the cycle of destruction. The history of the Order of Eos has taught us that impatience leads to disaster. The Delhut family has been patient for 200 years, Haggard contended. With or without the Philosopher's Stone, we will discover what is lurking beneath Lake Manitou. Ira, go back and let Sinclair know what's happening here. I'll be staying to properly vet Stewart and Marquette to make sure their families understand our ways. He turned to speak directly to Osius Haggard. Progress will be slow and patient. You'll have the backing of the Order of Eos behind you, but know that our enemies are just as powerful. Dobie walked toward Lake Manitou, knowing that he'd now play the part of Heimdall, the ever-watchful guardian of Asgard. Across the lake, a shadow stirred in the reeds, but Frankie Auerbach ignored it. All the animals came out at night, he knew, and dusk was the perfect time to catch bullfrogs. On the northern shore, Lily Weber looked over the notes she'd written about the Firehandler ritual she'd endured. Her unblemished hands held the pen that recorded the foreign syllables taught to her by Nana Conan. As she wrote them, her mouth practiced saying them. Trapped in the depths for countless centuries, one of the 12 shadows fed upon the faint song whispered on the air. It rose slowly to the surface, where a young boy waded closer and closer.
Chapter 36. Skipping School. Sometime after Sunday school was dismissed, Frankie Auerbach vanished. Bjorn Forsberg sat on the wagon outside of Dutch Boy Creamery, listening to Bert Van Slyke tell Mr. McPherson all about it. Frankie made the sperm whale joke, Bjorn remembered. It was now Monday morning, and even though Frankie had been gone for less than 24 hours, a chill ran down Bjorn's spine. John and Christine Auerbach, residents of Split Rock, had reported their son missing the previous night. Frankie had taken his fishing pole down to the beach near Split Rock Creek Outlet. Constable Graham had found the boy's footprints in the mud, along with the fishing gear, but there had been no signs of foul play.
Hey. Have a good day.
You too. We must muster a search party, Mr. McPherson said to Bert, who was better at gossip than running the family creamery. Van Slyke nodded. Constable Graham is going to keep searching. If the boy doesn't turn up soon, the church bells will ring to call everybody into town. Once the milk canisters were exchanged, Bjorn Forsberg moved his wagon into position. You hear about the Auerbach kid? Bert asked as his brother walked to the rear of the wagon. Bjorn nodded, and with a shrug, Bert went to the back of the wagon to help out. School started in 2 hours, and the students would go crazy about the talk of a missing classmate. I should just skip school and start looking for him now. Frankie's so stupid he's probably lost in the woods of Bleeding Rock. Bjorn wanted to imagine Frankie sitting in a duck boat, hunting. If not for school and the farm, that's what he'd be doing. But the terrible dreams that plagued Bjorn all night, leaving him lethargic and bitter, led his mind to darker places. As much as he loves fishing, the thought of water repulsed him now. The wagon's tailgate closed, causing him to jump. He signed for the delivery and turned his wagon for home. By the time he pulled into Old Copper Road, the McPherson wagon was already at the top of the hill, turning south toward their farmstead. A few yards to the east, a big iron trestle bridge spanned the Crow Wing River. That's where I'd begin if I were Graham, if something did happen. The current would pull Frankie's body into Split Rock Creek and down the Crow Wing River. By this evening, Frankie could be heading toward the town of Staples. The trip home lasted a few minutes. Bjorn prepares his monologue for his father. I want to help search for the Auerbach boy, he began, and with each question his father led to the inevitable answer. I suppose if he doesn't show up, we'll have done our part already, Gustav agreed. We can't go running around this evening when it's already dark and there's milking to be done. So the girls can collect my schoolwork, Parent Born clarified. Yes, but I don't want you going through the woods or sticking your nose around the mill. I'll search the Crow Wing River, but I want you to take the rowboat and check the shoreline of the bluffs all the way down to Buffalo Slough. Be sure to check Canaranzi Creek while you're down there. Bjorn's dream returned. Hundreds of bodies floated like lily pads in Lake Manitou. I will. To reach the waters of Lake Manitou, Bjorn had to walk the steep trail that led from behind the house all the way down to the rocky shore. Although not as steep as the bluffs at Bleeding Rock, he still had to clutch a few branches along the way when his feet slid. He and his father had built a simple pine dock which allowed the boat to be tied up during the summer. When winter came, it could be set onto the platform for storage. He's sending me to the wrong place. Does he want the glory of finding the body, or does he think a body will frighten me? Bjorn's odyssey began with a trip north along the tall bluffs. Once he reached the sawmill, he turned the rowboat to the west, making a full circle around Deadwood Island, which was filled with dead cottonwoods left behind after a spring flood. While the brush and young trees grew back quickly, Deadwood Island was a much more sinister atmosphere than Turtle Island, and its turtle shell hump that protected its trees. No Frankie. By the time the sun was high in the sky, he'd reached Buffalo Slough, filled with its fields of wild rice. Bodies don't float upstream. With a fairly dry summer, both the slough and the secondary outlet had all but dried up, which meant Split Rock Creek was now the primary outlet. The slough was already half a mile wide, beginning where the shallow waters came up and ending where the McPherson barn stood on the last bit of bluff. The Bordeaux farm sat on the other side of Canaranzi Creek, built on a location that rankled his father whenever he drove past it. Wild rice fields reached 6 feet above the surface of the water and grew thick as a rainforest jungle. So Bjorn paddled along the edge of the field until he found the deeper channel leading to Canaranzi Creek. Soon he was surrounded by walls of vegetation that closed in on him. Filtered by the tall plants, the water was clear and calm, allowing him to see all the way to the bottom, where tiny green spirals reached for the sun. Lily pads marked the place where the failed current allowed the strangers to grow in the crease of the two fields. Bjorn Forsberg cursed in Swedish when he saw the unmistakable hump of a human back floating in the still waters. Chapter 37, Freezing Moon. Lily Weber rushed to the window as she heard the grind of wagon wheels. Kermit Crane steered the milk wagon up the road to the reservation instead of continuing back to the Haskins farm. Father Guerin is back. I can't wait to tell him everything. Lily moved aside for her mother to peek out the window. Stepping outside into the porch, fall leaves filled the October air, and in the distance, Christopher Apple harvested his fields, making the approaching wagon appear like a painting. As always, Kermit Crane slouched on his seat of his wagon, making the 11-year-old boy look even smaller. When he saw Lily, he vigorously waved. It's good to see him doing better, Lily thought as she stepped off the porch. After Frankie Auerbach's death, Kermit had stopped talking like a chatterbox on their trips to Split Rock. With her prompting, Lily could only get a few grunts and single-word answers. She was no Sister Inez. The veteran nun had done her best to explain the death to the class, and most were red-eyed even before they came to church. Each time one of them asked a tough question about mortality, Lily flinched even though Sister Inez answered both poignant and silly questions with grace. After a few weeks of deep sorrow, the class eventually returned to normal. Guess who's back in town? He's teasing. Father Guerin, Lily answered, my mysterious hero. You guessed it. He wanted to let you know that he's free for his language lesson tomorrow, so I'll pick you up at the crack of dawn. He also wanted you to have these letters. Winnie appeared on the porch. Hello, Mrs. Weber, Kermit greeted. I've got letters for you. Lily stepped aside as her mother claimed 3 letters. Thank you, Kermit. I'll see you in the morning, Lily said, excusing the helpful young man. Be sure to dress warmly, he said. It's getting colder and colder in the morning. The first letter was from the Minnesota Territorial Prison, where her father wrote that he'd been transferred from Duluth to a town east of St. Paul called Stillwater. The second letter came from Morris, where McGeesey wrote that he was behaving and learning a lot. It didn't sound like her brother at all, even if she could tell it was written by hand. The third letter was a surprise. Fawn Chevrille had been unable to find her mother, but the Labiche family had been kind and hospitable in letting her stay with them. Lily spent most of the evening reading and rereading each letter, with a series of new questions after each study. Lily went to bed imagining Father Guerin on his horse, wearing a hooded duster over his priestly robes as he wandered lonely highways, crucifix on his chest and pistol in his pocket. By the time dawn came, Lily was waiting on the porch, dressed warmly, Once the normal greetings were exchanged, Kermit began with other bits of gossip. Willie understood why the boy knew all the gossip. Charles Crane, a gifted English blacksmith, had customers from all over the county visiting his forge in Sterling Center. My dad says the Blue Knife Bridge will be finished by November. So soon? That will make your trip a lot quicker, won't it? Reckon it will cut 20 minutes off my day, Kermit said. He glanced at her anyways. So, what were the letters about? Sensing danger, Lily studied him for the first time. Physically, the 11-year-old boy was as average could be. Short brown hair, a round Caucasian face, wide eyes, and an unblemished complexion. His clothing was drab and common. Father Guerin vouched for the family, but how well did he know the local families? The Sinclair sisters, whose husbands now ran Triton Corporation, lived on the western shore of Lake Manitou, just a short trip from Sterling Junction. If the Crane family stood to benefit from the endeavors of Triton, could she trust any of them? They were just letters from my family saying everyone is doing well. Today I'll tell him, before the lessons start. I'll tell him everything. Someone needs to know. Inside of St. Marie's Catholic Church, she wasn't a fire handler. She was just Lily. Before running up the stairs to the balcony, she wandered into the sanctuary, pausing at the stained glass portrait of the resurrected Christ with Mary Magdalene at his feet. The scandalous woman had confessed her sins and become one of Christ's most ardent followers. Mary hardly knew Jesus, yet confessed. Lily hardly knew Father Guerin. So why can't I tell him? Turning, she looked up at the balcony, her breathing heavy. She trusted Guerin, but doubt still lingered. How do I bridge this subject when he won't be open with me? That's terrible. She asked as he entered the balcony. Bindigan, he answered, looking up from his pew covered in scattered papers. Lily paused just inside the doorway so as not to look too eager. How was your trip to Leech Lake? Successful. I met with Chief Sweatingstone. You did? You didn't speak to him about the Song of the Manitou, did you? Of course not. That's just between us. I went to Leech Lake on business. Your revolution then continues without my father. Picturing her father side by side with Guerin somehow inspired her, but instead her father sat in jail while Guerin continued without him. He sighed. Yes, your grandfather's a powerful man, and even though the government doesn't officially recognize his authority, the people do. Despite the arrest of your father, Blackfish LaBiche and Pierre Leduc not only continue the illegal bootlegging operation, but also have become allies in the effort. Lily left the doorway and moved to stand beside the closest pew. And the school? Guerin raised his eyebrows. All my efforts are tied to the school, which is why I trekked across 10 miles of frozen water to Bear Island to let him know about the several proposed laws. What kind of laws? There is a Kansas lawman who wants to create a law that will abolish tribal governments entirely. All Indian children will be forced into public schools, and the individual lawmakers will be left to fend for themselves. Can they do such a thing? They are already drawing up plans, which will steal an entire state from the 5 civilized tribes, but it will impact all Indians. It will be a federal law and could be the final nail in the coffin. Lily sunk down into the pew. If they pass this law, won't it defeat the whole purpose of having Turtle Island Jesuit School? Oh no, we need the school in place to offer as an alternative. The atrocities at the boarding schools are coming to light, which is why the public school policy is being offered, as if to sweep dirt under the rug. Both the public school system and boarding school system are cultural genocide for your people in all tribal nations. He smiled. This spring, once the ground thaws, building will begin. My travels not only rally support for my revolution, as you call it, but also to find pupils for the school. My grandfather was once a proud warrior. What if you get a full-fledged war instead of a few protests or conflicts? He shook his head. I know what I'm doing, Lily. The protection of your people has always been my priority. But if Bushy Bill had dared, the revolution could have ended. You're just one man. Yes, which is a lesson I learned in Cuba. His expression was amused until he grew serious again. Trust me when I say I have powerful friends. I have newspapers, lawyers, politicians, and businessmen in my pocket. I'm prepared to keep the Chippewa fight these days. I'm prepared to help the Chippewa fight these changes, but I have plans in place to keep things from escalating. I do not want a massacre like Wounded Knee, but if the Chippewa are going to keep any of their land from the hands of the greedy, they will need a rally behind a hero. Chief Sweating-Stone? Thanks to Blackfish LaBiche, news of Gull Lake has spread already, but strangely, the inglorious treatment of Sweating-Stone is talked about even more. He had to walk all the way back to Leech Lake from Duluth after he was released. He complained about ruining a pair of his favorite moccasins. Lily grinned, wishing she knew her maternal grandfather better. Relaxing, she looked around his room and saw most of Garen's belongings still packed. Andy A's Hyan. I'm going farther north to Bad River Reservation in Wisconsin, she demanded. I'm going to... Lily chuckled. You just can't mix English in whenever you want. When are you leaving for the north? Aaron said, indicated Monday. I won't be getting many lessons this week. Well, you need them, Lily teased, but he didn't react. What's in Bad River? A rumor. Apparently there's a Midday who claims to have found something called the Gitche Anamiki. Lily's heart paused. The Great Thunderbird? You know it? At her look, he amended. Of course you know it. He shook his head. Apparently this Midday has created a bit of a religious revival in some villages. I'm going to find out more information from him. I should return by freezing moon in November. He'll be gone for so long. Have you been writing down Nanak's lessons like I asked you to? I have. In secret, afterwards. That's excellent. You are recording vital information for your people. I cannot wait to see what you have gathered. Talk of the Great Thunderbird derailed her planned conversations, so she surrendered to her prepared lessons instead. During the lessons, she had his undivided attention, even if it was only on the words and situations she prepared. While learning, Garen seemed younger, more earnest, a student, and didn't wear the trappings of his office. He smiled through most of the lesson, but when it ended, the smile went away and he returned to being Father Garen. I've been thinking, she offered thoughts after putting away her materials. What did you mean someone found the Gitche Anamiki? Someone is claiming to be the Great Thunderbird? That's why I need to make this trip. I need to understand. I'm fighting a political battle, and the last thing I need is for a zealot to stir things up like Wounded Knee. He rubbed a hand over his face, his shoulder slumping. So, what has Nanak been teaching you lately? No, Lily said strongly, even though she wasn't sure why. No. No what? How do I bring this up when I know he's been keeping things from me? I need to trust him as much. I need him to trust me as much as I need to trust him. No. You do this all the time. I ask you a question and you squirm away before I get an answer. None of this makes any sense. The school, your revolution, your interest in the Great Thunderbird. I'm so tired of the secrets, she glared. Why are you really here? I have been as open as possible. I confess things that are almost treasonous. You know more about my mission than anyone else I can think of. Fine, Lily crossed her arms. Play your games. There are things I haven't confessed either. You're not the only one with secrets. What games? The school gets built. Grandfather Nanak gets a dozen young apprentices. I get a job. McGeesy comes home. My father is released. My mother gets a brick house. My grandfather Sweatingstone takes a political prisoner, blows up a bridge, or burns a building down. Just enough to get the attention of your newspaper. Your powerful friends jump into action, preserving the reservations. She jumped to her feet, turning away. Why? Why do you care? It's a humanitarian mission, Lily. Excuse me for saying this, but you are full of it. At his snort, she turned around. Hold on a second. I'm acting as your spy when you already seem to know what you're looking for. You knew more about my family than I did, and now you're off to Bad River to look for some zealot? What's next, Father Garin? His title passed her lips bitterly. Why are you obsessed with my family and our dirty little secrets? I mean, you understand why Joseph Nicollet was so taken aback by your great-grandfather Shagobay. He sighed. Your family is full of people with keen, discerning minds. I want to answer you, but I need more time. Yes, I'm an investigator, and yes, I'm a real Jesuit priest, but I'm part of something beyond the Society of Jesus. I think your grandfather Nanak understands this, but for now, both of us are trying to understand if we can fully trust each other. Both of us are trying to answer the same questions. When I have my answers, I'll lay them at your feet, understood? Just give me a few more months, and I'll tell you everything. Lily shifted her crossed arms. Do I accept that? Agreed? Next time. Always next time. If you're going to Bad River, you can't be mixing your English and Anishinaabe together. There are folks there even more set in their ways than Grandfather Nanak. Be careful what you say, and don't bring up anything about the 7 fires, or they'll slam the door in your face. Or worse. Chapter 38, Job Opening. Am I too handsome? Martin carefully combed his blonde hair in the small mirror hanging on the living room wall. He checked his teeth to make sure they were clean before stepping back to inspect his clothing. Mother was right. I grew into my clothes. When he crossed the Atlantic from Bergen, Norway, he wore his prized outfit so it wouldn't be stolen. After all the felling of trees, plowing of fields, and harvesting of crops, Martin Nielsen was now twice as thick as when he'd come. His white dress shirt pulled at the buttons, and his expensive jacket, with the bright green lapels, barely crossed. You're going to get me jealous dressed like that, his wife Dolly said at a distance, holding his green top hat in her hands. I have to impress Mr. Van Slyke so he knows I'm serious. I need to convince him that he needs an extra set of hands at the creamery this winter. I don't want to twiddle my thumbs all winter long. Oh, I understand we need the extra money, especially with the baby coming early next summer. Promise me you'll save all of your charm for Mr. Van Slyke and not for all of your former sweethearts in Split Rock. Martin kissed her on the lips, pulling her close enough so that the small bump on her belly pressed against him. After I get the job, I'll bring back some fabric for baby clothes. That would be lovely. Dolly planted an even harder kiss on his lips. Please stay away from the Forsberg house, at least until Britta finds a beau. She gives me the evil eye whenever I see her. I'll be on my best behavior. Martin Nielsen placed his hat upon his head, then winked. Outside, Grim waited, already hitched to the wagon filled with surplus wallets, acorns, apples, fruits, and corn that didn't fit in the packed root cellar. Martin and Dolly were ready for the winter, but they lived harvest to harvest. An influx of cash would help them develop the land quickly. I'm a married man with a child on the way, Martin reminded himself as he climbed to the wagon bench. I'm no longer a boy shivering in the cold. The 18-year-old farmer eyed his home and compared it to the other farms along the road to Split Rock. A few years earlier, the lot was all that he could afford, and despite the thrill of living off the land, he barely survived the first winter. Having bought the most worthless plot of land surrounding the lake, a rocky point overlooking Turtle Island, Martin and Grim cleared the countless trees and boulders that first year to eke out enough tillable land to survive. 3 years later, Martin meant to keep the momentum going. Grim snorted as they passed through the thick oak forest at the turn of the road. Now that the leaves had all dropped, the woods revealed its secrets. Gnarled trunks and twisted branches that looked like clawed fingers. The Grim Reaper isn't afraid of a few ghosts, are you, boy? Grim raised his head, slightly picking up speed. Martin used the popularized view of death, the hooded skeleton carrying a sickle, when he had named his beautiful colt. Nielsen's Nordic roots taught him that before the Grim Reaper, Odin had once disguised himself with the hood of a mortal man to walk openly in the world of mortals as Grimnir. The strangers that harassed Grimnir were cursed, while the only one who helped him, a boy named Agnar, was blessed as the lord of the Goths. So, don't mess with me or Grim, Martin told the shadows among the trees. Since once old Copper Road turned toward Split Rock, his mood lightened. At Buffalo Slough, where the Auerbach boy had drowned, he passed by the farm owned by Jeremy Bordeaux and his unfaithful wife. She'd once managed to get Martin's shirt off before he ran from the clutches of Potiphar's wife. Of Bordeaux's bevy of children, half were rumored to belong to men from the county. Next, Martin passed by the McPherson dairy farm, with its domed roof towering above everything else on both sides of the valley. With sons and a flock of healthy dairy cows, McPherson could afford the finest amenities money could buy. One day I'll have a big red barn also. Finally, he reached the corner where the road turned east and downhill toward the Crow Wing River Bridge. Tucked into the woods of the corner, he looked over to the Forsberg house and then turned his gaze to the road, knowing how Britta often stood at the second floor balcony to watch his wagons pass. Dutch Boy Creamery was nestled along the river, just before the bridge. In the morning, wagons from a dozen dairy farms would line up to offload their milk, with Nielsen usually having the smallest load. With farmers milking 12 hours apart, the loads came in during these wee hours of the morning, bringing the evening and recent milking before the warmth of day spoiled it. But there were no wagons when Martin arrived mid-morning. Even so, Bert Van Slyke, the elder of the Van Slyke boys, came out with empty cream cans. "Got a wedding or a funeral today?" Martin shook it off. "I was wondering if I could speak to your father." Bert put his hands on his hips. "Sure, follow me." In the past 3 years, Martin had never seen past the doorway where the Van Slyke boys collected the cream cans. The interior of the creamery was filled with monstrous metallic tanks. A sudden release of steam drew his attention away from Bert. "Pay attention, Stefan," Bert yelled to his younger brother. "You're going to ruin a whole batch." "Something's not working right." Stefan turned one of the wheels to release the pressure in the boiler tank. "It keeps overheating." "You want to haul cream cans and I can do your job? Turn the knobs when the numbers reach the numbers, when the needles reach the numbers. I've written it down for you on the pipes." "I know, but when I open the release valve, it's like the water doesn't leave. I think the valve is defective." "They're brand new. Are you sure you're turning them the right way? Look, turn left to open, right to close." Bert spun the metal wheel and watched the pressure drop immediately. Fresh water from Lake Manitou came in through the intake tube, passed through the filters, filled the boiler, and then was released out through the outtake tubes that dumped into the Crow Wing River, cleaning the machine at the same time. "That's exactly what I've been doing," Stefan pouted. "Are you feeling it? Well, your eyes look funny." Stephen had dark bags under his eyes, like the remnant of a fist fight, and the veins of his eyeballs made the whites of his eyes look almost pink. "I'm fine if this machine would just work." "Be quiet and just do your job, or we can find someone else who can." Bert then looked directly at Martin, causing him to grin. Bert led Martin through the noisy processing room into another chamber, which was where the milk was processed for bottling, cheese production, and other dairy products. "Forsbergs have sick cows," Bert announced as he led them to the distant office. "Any of them die?" "No, but 3 of them have some intestinal problems. But don't worry, we sterilize all the cans. Keep an eye on your cows, though." He glanced at them, smirking. "You looking for a job?" "I am." "Jeremy Bordeaux is divorcing his wife. I guess he caught his wife in bed. Guess he caught her in bed with Delbert Grant again. So there's a job opening with the post office, but we just hired Lauren Larson as our new milkman." Martin felt his hopes sink. "I'd still like a word with your father." "Bert, it won't shut off," Stephen shouted from the far side of the creamery. Bert sighed and took off jogging for the cream. Just as Bert reached the doorway of the creamery, an explosion shook the air in the building, sending glass and debris everywhere, knocking Bert off his feet. Hot clouds of water filled the room, and Martin still ran towards it. Bert had landed on his back but looked no worse for wear, so Martin kept running. Just inside the doorway, Martin found Stefan on the ground gasping, a large piece of metal stuck in his chest. "I turned it left," he whispered as blisters began to form on his scalded skin. Bert rushed in moments later, collecting his dying brother in his arms. Waiting for farmers and stunned workers rushed over also, helpless as Martin. The explosion had blown a hole in the wall large enough to drive a wagon through. Grim! Martin stepped through the rubble and out into the cold, wintry air. Both Grim and the wagon were fine, although a dozen yards from where he'd parked. "Don't fret," Martin said as he rubbed the horse's quivering flank. Grim continued to snort and shift as if standing on hot coals. "What is it, you hurt?" A strange cloud of cooling steam rolled out of the opening of the creamery, and with each passing second it shrunk in size. It appeared as if the warm air escaping from the creamery created a draft that pushed the cloud uphill toward the woods. By the time it reached the trees behind the lot, the cloud condensed to the size of a cow, but the smaller it got, the denser it got. Then it began to crawl with long, slender arms up the hill toward Bleeding Rock.